Chair, you can start the meeting whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us for this special meeting of the Arts Committee. I guess we'll get down to business with a call to order and roll call. With a quick aviso, this is our first time through this as a committee, so for the public and for ourselves, let's be patient and kind as we work through some of this technology. So starting with that, quick roll call, I believe, is in order. Let's see. Member Black, are you present?
Yes.
Member Goodman?
Here.
Member Holland?
Right here.
Member Rose?
Present.
Member Zhang?
Present.
Okay, and I believe Member Kellogg is absent. Is that correct, Eva? Great. Okay. Moving on, approval of minutes from our February meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from February?
I move to approve the technology, the minutes from the meeting in February.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. And I believe we have to go through and do a roll call vote for an item like this. Is that correct, staff? Or can we do a voice?
Yes, please.
So here we go. Member Black?
Yes.
Member Goodman?
Yes.
Member Holland?
Yes.
Oh, Member Rose?
Yes.
Member Zhang?
Yes.
Okay, and I also vote in favor. Yes. Okay. Moving on to item 3, public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address the committee at this time, particularly for something that is not on our current agenda?
For a member of the public that's participating in our virtual meeting, if you'd like to make a comment, please click on the raise your hand button, or if you're participating by phone, please press *9. Thank you for participating. And I don't see anyone raising their hand.
Okay, great. Moving on to item 4, announcements. Are there any announcements from staff or committee members?
Point, staff does not have any announcements.
Member Holland?
Yes, I'd like to announce that I'm leaving the committee because I'm having 2 more grandchildren in October. I'm not having them, my kids are having them, but I just anticipate being way in over my head. And it's an important time for my family. I just want to be able to be there. And I'm also working pretty much full time throughout this pandemic. And so I just want to clear up as much space as I possibly can. I am definitely available to help with anything you need that can be kind of ad hoc help.
Thank you. I know I appreciate that. I'll let other committee members speak as they would like, but thanks for making the time today. And obviously you have an extremely understandable reason for freeing up more time. So congratulations again. And we do look forward to your future wisdom. Any other announcements from staff or committee members? Okay. Presentations. Any presentations from staff?
No presentations tonight.
Okay, we're going fast so far. Here we go. Item 6, why we're here tonight, discussion and possible action on matters related to the following items. 6.1, Black Lives Matter Art Project. The City Council has directed the Arts Committee to gather input from the community on a Black Lives Matter art project and to return to the City Council with recommendations. Recommendation from staff, discuss community involvement, possible locations, funding, public art review process, timeline, and the formation of a subcommittee to develop options for the project based on committee discussion and input received by the community. So that's what we'll be working on primarily tonight. Before we dive into our comments, questions and answers, etc., Eva or other staff members, is there any wider context or pre-information you'd like to share with us?
You took the words right out of my mouth. I think that sums up the agenda item very well. And I think as we move forward, and we have 3 participants here tonight who we look forward to hearing from as well, but that the hope is to form a subcommittee to really dive into this project a little bit further and come back to the committee with some options.
Great, thank you. Committee, as we get started, this isn't gonna, it'll be a little more difficult for our usual kind of back and forth and flow because of the technology, but I think we can try to make it as fluid as possible. Would anyone like to start with their initial comments, thoughts, recommendations, updates, etc.? Member Goodman?
Yeah, I just listened to the council meeting, virtual council meeting from last week in preparation for this meeting, and I did make a bunch of notes. I think some of those points will come up later, but one of the main things that struck me that's very different from what I heard in the meeting, from what I'm looking at on the agenda, was that there was a pointed question at the very end when they were making the motion as to whether the referral to the Arts Committee was going to be, the term was an open referral. That is to say, is it going to be a strictly Black Lives Matter themed mural, or was there room for something else? And as I understand the council vote, they said it's strictly an open referral, and that is actually at odds with what our agenda item is. So before we go ahead and discuss anything, I wonder if staff could clarify this, because this seems an important difference.
Sure. I was looking at the actual minutes from the meeting, have not been posted quite yet, but the agenda item on our agenda tonight comes directly from the draft motion that was made, that is an open referral. So we can definitely, staff can look into that further of getting a little bit clearer explanation of the intention behind that. But
yeah, and I think also this stems from the mayor's request, the mayor's item to have a mural painted on the Ilona Greenway. And the original idea was to have, the mural painted on the bicycle path with the big yellow letters saying Black Lives Matter. But after listening to the community, the mayor and the council decided to move the item to the Arts Committee for your discussion on what would be the most appropriate artwork to represent the topic of Black Lives Matter. So the item is open for discussion, although there was a lot of talk about a mural. The actual motion was for a art project. So I think that's the open-ended question is, it does not have to be a mural, but what would constitute, the most appropriate art project for a Black Lives Matter art project. So I think our agenda item, the way it's listed, meets, the intention of the council's recommendation to the Arts Committee.
yeah, I thank you, Isabel. Well said. And then also just adding to that, what does the community really want? So is a mural what people are asking for, or is there another art piece that that would be a better fit for Albany? Did we answer your question?
Member Goodman, do you have a question?
Well, that's not what I heard, but I could certainly go and listen again. It's not like I have a bias one way or the other. I just wanted to clearly understand what our mission is tonight and how much breadth we have in terms of theme. And so I mean, I'll take it at your word if that's, you're speaking for the city on this. So that's fine.
I think in either case, however the answer comes back with whatever detail, the wider parameters of gathering input from the community and ultimately making some type of recommendation or providing feedback to the council would remain. I think so. We can still have a productive discussion of some sort tonight. Are there other questions, concerns from the committee about this agenda item? Your initial thoughts, suggestions, Member Holland?
I was wondering how we were going to collect input from the city when we usually do it in the form of a presentation or a collection in the community center. And I don't think people are going to the community center right now, so I'm not 100% sure. I think we should brainstorm if we decide to ask the community for input, how we get input in a way that is as legitimate as that.
Okay. Does anyone have a reaction to that? I have a quick thought if people are willing to continue down this line of thinking. And one is, I think Member Holland brings up a good point. The virus situation impacts our ability to interact with the community. I think we can have a two-pronged approach where on one hand, we can have some form of digital intake mechanism, right? Asking for feedback, examples, maybe things they would like to see, share their feelings, where they think it would be useful, what would mean the most to them, etc. I think there probably is some type of scope for responsible, socially distanced listening sessions or conversations with community members. They would have to be fairly limited because of the timeline. But I think something like that would be possible in addition to any type of digital surveying that we could do. I think that would be sensible, and I think the city could provide also resources about publicizing the survey or disseminating it appropriately, helping with any technical issues in terms of storing files, etc. I think that's a pretty easy ask.
I'll add on that too, is that other ideas that came out of previous projects as far as notification came with a direct mailer to the 500 feet, wherever the location is, a 500-foot radius, as well as posting a replica at the site with a website, as Chair Snyder mentioned, is to a link to the survey or something, where to digitally put or virtually put in your input. So, and all of that with the just to refresh your memory, with the community projects, that was all outlined. The notification process and how we gathered community input was outlined in the RFP too. So I imagine that this would be very similar, that it would be outlined in the RFP.
I think, Eva, if I can ask very quickly, and then Councilmember Goodman, this might be slightly different in some ways that I understand we've started with the idea of Ilona Greenway, but my understanding is in some sense, we're seeking input from the community. Maybe there's another location, that might be more powerful. There's a different project that comes back from the community that might be viable. And so some of the previous mechanisms we've used for notification might not be entirely applicable yet, because we're still gathering information from the community. That's my understanding about what type of project we'd ultimately want to endorse.
Yes. And so what is your question for staff?
I was just saying I think the mechanisms you're describing to notify the community, et cetera, they're based on knowing a geographic location of a project. And we're not there yet. We don't know where this would be or what it would be yet. I just wanted to note that.
You're right. And it seems like there's we're talking about two different timelines, right? There's the actual getting what's the interest of the community, and then afterwards the notification process of, here is the artwork, here's where it's going to be, here's how you provide input. So yes, sorry about that.
Right.
Yep.
With that, I turn it over to Peter. You had your hand raised previously.
I'd like to speak.
Okay, noted.
Yeah, I just want to go back to what Eva was saying. There was a lot of discussion at the city council meeting. The word urgency came up quite a bit, particularly from Mayor Pilch in the beginning. He felt like this was a important thing to move along, and we have this whole process in place, which is very transparent and very thorough, but also very time consuming. And I wondered, Eva, if it was your sense that we were being asked to kind of shortcut our normal process in the hopes of coming up with a quicker solution, and if so, what might that entail? Perhaps that's for a later discussion. I'd also like to point out that some people felt why. I mean, it was a rather pointed remark. Why are you so urgent about this a mural, a piece of art, as opposed to some of the very important policy decisions that need to be made by the city as well? And so there was some caution about moving too fast and just sort of doing something for the sake of doing it and not doing it thoroughly, professionally, with a lot of community input, all of which might slow it down, of course. So so I'm a little confused. I guess I'm still confused about exactly what the council is hoping to get out of us tonight. And before we discuss it, I'm hoping that you can provide some parameters for where we're expected to end up at the end of the evening.
Sure, and I had some of those same thoughts listening to the meeting of kind of both ends of the spectrum of like there was this urgency and yet let's be thoughtful and make the right choices. The way I had envisioned it, and I think it's up to the Arts Committee and especially the subcommittee to decide is, and one thing I'll share tonight after public comment is a timeline of, as you mentioned, the public master or the arts master plan. It outlines it very clearly of the timeline for the RFP, the timeline for the notification process, and so on. And if you add all that up, it might be about 6 months if we're lucky, as we know in the Arts Committee. That's a best case scenario. So what I had envisioned is maybe subcommittee comes back with some options. So maybe that's according to the Arts Master Plan. And then they can also make a recommendation of, if we shorten this here, if we shorten this, or we take this part out, we can actually do it in 2 months or 3 months. And then it would be up to council to decide what the final project would look like in the timeline. But to present, they're looking to the Arts Committee as an advisory body to do the research. What have other cities done? What are our different options? So that's how I interpreted it. And the subcommittee might have some other ideas as well.
Before Member Rose asks her question, Member Goodman, do you have a follow-up question or concern?
Yeah.
On this line of thought? No, you're good? Okay. I'd like to call on Member Rose, and then also note, I see that one of our attendees has a question as well. But Member Rose?
Hi. Well, I'm looking at I listened to the city council meeting, and I also was at the other meeting where we heard members of the community speak, and I actually participated in that. So I feel similarly to Member Goodman, and I am reading here, exactly what it says. It says, the City Council has directed the Arts Committee to gather input from the community on a Black Lives Matter art project, and of course to return to the City Council with recommendations. So from that, my understanding is a decision has been made that there's going to be, or what is under consideration is something having to do with Black Lives Matter. So that decision has already been made. And the recommendation here discuss the community involvement, possible locations. So from that, I gather not necessarily Ohlone, that area. And then of course, all this other stuff, the timeline, etc. So what I'm wondering is, can we, as has been mentioned, shortcut at least the gathering of information, especially given the COVID situation, which has already been mentioned, because that's just not going to happen in the same way. Things are different now, for better or for worse. So, for example, can we put together like a Google Doc and, or an email address where people can send in their comments, or bulletin board, or that type of thing. Something along that line to gather at least some of that community, some of those comments. The folks that don't have access to technology, yeah, that's an issue. We might have to do the cards and paper, but at least can we get going with something really kind of simple like that. That's all for me right now.
Thank you very much. I think my quick reaction on what we discussed earlier is that something like that is possible. It's probably desirable in this context. I'll leave it to other committee members if they have additional thoughts or questions, but I think we tentatively agree that we will need to have some type of digital outreach mechanism. We can do it as quickly and as simply as possible to make it easy, but that I think we have to do something like that in this context. Member Black?
It's a thought. I don't know how good a thought it is, but it is a thought. We have had a mural in process for about 2 years now. The focus was, can you all homework? The focus was having to do with inclusivity and what Albany stands for and all of that. I'm wondering if we couldn't, since we've invested a lot of time in these people anyway, approach them as to whether they could enhance the actual mural that they were planning on doing to change the focus a little and see if that might speed things up. And we have been trying to work with them for quite a while now, so it seems kind of possible.
Reactions or comments? Member Rose, followed by Member Holland, and then I do want to also go back to the public and see if they have.
Yeah, I just want to mention, I would find that I like the idea of trying to roll this into that, given all of the time that's been spent on there. However, as a visual artist by profession, I will say, not only do I think that would be very difficult for the artists, I also think it would be not appropriate. They have given a lot of thought to that composition. The central theme of that is not Black Lives Matter. It is something else. And so I would find that problematic.
Okay, thank you. Member Holland?
I agree, and I agree with that completely. And I also think that the location of that mural is not as central or as visible as this one wants to be.
Other responses, comments, reactions? I would add quickly one item that maybe can come out of this in connection to the mural project that's already in process. If we do find a way to speed up this process and make it more efficient in some ways, maybe those lessons learned could be applied to our existing projects as well. With that, I would like to ask our public participants, our attendees, if anyone would like to ask a question, offer their perspective, etc. You're welcome to do that later as well, but also wanted to offer that opportunity at this time. I see Brian Doss has raised his hand. Mr. Doss?
Yeah, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah, I just thought that I had sent the email, and so I thought, I was, invited, which is great. And I just thought that it would be really great to have a big Black Lives Matter mural or a reminder, and it makes me feel some type of way that we even need a reminder, but we do actually need a reminder. And the bigger it is and the more prominent the place, I think it would be the most powerful. In my mind, I envision something on Solano or something on Marin, so that, you know, when students are on their way to school, or people are on their way to work, or police are patrolling and going down those main areas, they see that, and it's a reminder that our lives do indeed matter. And so that was my vision, and I saw like other cities kind of doing that, and I saw kids involved, and I saw law enforcement involved with painting the mural, and you know, it was just a community gathering experience, and it was something that everybody could be proud of because everybody was working on it together. But the outline of it and the design and things like that, it was done by, you know, artists and people who were artists by trade. So I would hope that, you know, we would still kind of follow that. But that's just my vision when I think about students that spoke at the town, students that spoke with me prior to the town hall about their experiences in Albany, and parents that I spoke with. And I wanted to do, or I wanted to be a part of something where they could look at that and say, that this community cares about me. They embrace who I am as a human being. And I think that this would do that in a way. There's still a lot of work to be done. But I appreciate that people are starting the process. So I think that this has us headed in the right direction. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Trustee Doss. We appreciate that. While you're here, would it be possible to ask you also, for your perspective, any advice you might have on how to best capture community involvement, community awareness around something like this, to gather the community input that we've been tasked with putting together?
Yeah, I think that one thing that we did when because we're in the process of gathering community input on what schools will look like in the fall, we did a survey. It had a few questions on it. It wasn't too long. And then at the end, there was a section where you could write in your own comments, and that seemed to work really well. And people responded to that. And then there was another forum that we used that allowed people to share their comments. I could send over the link, but basically it was similar to a Google Doc, but it was more interactive and allowed people to share their comments there. And so those worked really well. And, you know, we could collaborate on that. Happy to, you know, help distribute any information to the community that you need from, you know, any help you need from us. We're happy to do it.
Thank you. That was going to be my next question. I know you can't speak for the entire school board yourself, but what type of collaboration you might see as feasible between the city and the school district on something like this?
You know, as far as sending out the information to students and parents to get people involved. If it's a big community thing where, you know, there's going to be a lot, you need a lot of participants and things like that. You know, we could send out that information. You know, because we're working now to really make sure that we're a part of this change and make sure that things are better for students in the fall. So no, we would be happy to do that. I can't imagine any board members disagreeing with that. So, you know, we could, if you guys finalize a plan, and you know, we can put it into communication and send it out to make sure that at least those 3,000 plus families receive the information.
Thank you. I think that would be excellent. I don't want to monopolize all of your time. Do other committee members have questions that they'd like to ask Trustee Doss? Trustee Doss, do you have, before we dive back into conversation, or as we do you have any additional comments, concerns, questions, suggestions?
Nope. Only thing I'll say is please let me know if there's anything I could do to help the process. And once you guys do decide on something, I look forward to participating in the finished product.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate your time this evening. And I see Member Rose has a.
Before you leave, I don't know whether you're planning to stay for the rest of this, but before you leave, I wanted to ask you, the New Yorker sometime back published an article about the art on the mall there that, started it all, that says Black Lives Matter. And they wrote in the New Yorker, the Washington, D.C. chapter of Black Lives Matter condemned the mural and the street sign that was also done. And they talk about why they condemned it. And some of the reason why they condemned it was we heard echoes of that in our in the city council meeting and all of the feedback from the community, including, I think this is where we first heard the term performative. Just a small quote here from this. The group called the project, quote, a performative distraction from real policy changes. And it goes on. I don't want to take up, more time here, but I'd just like to hear your thoughts on that.
It's a good point that people are making. And basically what they're saying is that you can paint the murals, you can put the signs in your front lawn, but if we don't change the actual policies around policing and the hearts and minds of the people who are in positions of power, that the signs and the artwork doesn't mean anything. And so that's what they're saying. I feel as if it's you need to do both. I think it's important to have symbols of change, the same way that we're tearing down, or the same way that people are tearing down statues that symbolize hate, is the same reason why I think that these murals and signs are important. But they have to be a stepping stone to real change. So having these murals up and having these signs help us to continue the conversation and move up the timeline for the police force to let us know their numbers based on race. How many people are they pulling over? Things like that. It's set to change in 2023 or 2024, but maybe we move along. Maybe we move up that timeline. And so I think that things like this help to continue the conversation, and so that it's not just a moment in time where everybody kind of rallies around and then it's forgotten about. Because if it's a big sign in the middle of the street, then people won't forget about it and the conversations continue. And so that real change can happen. So those are my thoughts on it. People often will, I think I got some feedback from the letter that I wrote to the community, and it said that, and the person said that, well, don't encourage people to talk to me. I don't want to have conversations with people. And we just agreed to disagree, because I would much rather somebody have a conversation with me and get a better understanding about what it means to be a Black man in America than to not have the conversation with me and to continue to have a view that's uninformed. So I just agreed to disagree with that. So everybody's not going to agree with what's done, but it's better to do something than nothing at all.
Thank you. And I see that Member Holland has her hand raised.
I was thinking before we met, and even more after I hear Lisa what you said, and Trustee what you said, I have been thinking that would it be great? I mean, I thought one of the great things about the Washington, D.C. sign, Black Lives Matter on the street, was that it was right in front of the White House. And I thought that pairing of those two things was really great. And I wondered if we wanted to involve the police department and even maybe make the mural on the police department, so it was right there tied to the situation. Like Black Lives Matter is a policing issue. If it was right there, that was my thought. I would put it there.
I had the same thought. Let's say that.
Well, I that sounds great to me. It's right across the street from my house. So.
Other questions, discussion points with Brian? Trustee Doss, you're welcome to stay on the call as long as you would like. We appreciate your input. Does anyone have other additional suggestions about the potential art involved? I know at some point we need to talk about subcommittee and information gathering before we dive into those details. Does anyone have additional thoughts about potential locations, nature of the art, etc.? Member Rose? Member Rose, it's you.
Okay, I don't want to, dominate the conversation here. And I have a weak internet connection at the moment. So I just wanted to mention that the committee, has for a while, we've been talking about, we have another issue we've been struggling with, which I see perhaps a way to integrate it here. Speaking of ways to roll things together and get stuff done. We've been talking for a while about having the city of Albany sort of expand its idea of art, what art is, that it's not just stuff applied to a surface. And we've talked about the integration of the performing arts, right? I wonder whether given the importance of this and the meaningfulness of this to the community, can we integrate some sort of performing arts action, as it were, in with this project? So, for example, I don't know, there's like, during the time that a mural or an artwork is being created, that there's some food bank thing going on, or community orchestra, I don't know what, but can we integrate something here so that we can begin to change the consciousness of the city council, that it understand that in the 21st century, art is not just stuff applied to a surface. My thought.
I appreciate that comment, and I have a response. I'm wondering if anyone else has a question or concern in that vein. If not, I would echo Member Rose's sentiments, and I think there's no reason why we could not, or the subcommittee could not suggest some art of that nature. I really think whatever the subcommittee and the committee takes back to the council needs to reflect community input. So it's not something that we should necessarily try to apply to community sentiment, but I think there's certainly room for whatever we put back to council or whatever the subcommittee puts back to council. There's room for research. There's room for our collective expertise to be layered into community input, etc. So if the subcommittee gathers information, consults, does some homework, and it comes back with, these are the 3 best potential art projects, I think all parties involved have to be open to what that might be. Maybe it's a mural, maybe it's a performance, maybe it's something else. But I certainly see no reason why these types of arts that Member Rose is describing would be excluded from this type of consideration, given the remit we've been provided.
If I may say something about how to gather input from the community, which is one of the main tasks that the Arts Committee has been tasked to do, is, you've already, if you listen to the town hall meeting and the city council meeting, when the item was forwarded to the Arts Committee, you'll see that there was a lot of public comment already involved. So you have that to work with. But in addition, I would suggest that the primary work of the subcommittee to start with would be to come up with survey questions, about location, about what type of art. And you ask the community, what do you think, ask them to rank or to offer advice. But I would think that would be the first thing, is for a subcommittee to start drafting survey questions, and then staff can help with the dissemination of the survey and some advertisement for for the gathering of input from the Arts Committee. So, I think these are all, what you're discussing is all very important and should be also asked, should be asked of the community. That's basically, and I think that's what is so fruitful of this conversation, is that you're realizing that there are so many aspects of this that need to be discussed amongst you, but also with the community, so that a recommendation to council can be put together. And the recommendation to council could have one or two options. It doesn't have to be, this is it, right? It could be, this is what we've heard from the community, so this would be option number one. But we feel like, based on our expertise and, what, the public art process, this would probably be the most viable option. And you can also ask council to waive some of the timeframes of that are in the public art master plan, if you feel like it would be it would be beneficial. But again, there's a lot of emphasis on public input, so I would also make sure that that is still a part of the process at the beginning, and also as you seek the artist and the final art piece.
I think that point is well made and well taken, and presents itself as an opportunity, if there's no other questions or concerns in this vein, to pivot towards kind of the more nuts and bolts of forming the subcommittee and providing some guidance on what the subcommittee is to do. One question I had for staff quickly is, the subcommittee envisioned as a subcommittee of the Arts Committee, or a kind of ad hoc subcommittee from, Social and Economic Justice Committee, School District, et cetera, et cetera?
No, it's a subcommittee of the Arts Committee. Mm-hmm.
And are we thinking 3 members, 5 members?
It has to be less than a quorum. So your less than a quorum would be 3 members, up to 3 members. You could be 2, but no more than 3.
Okay. I would ask then, if I'm sure we can work our way through this, but are there any people who would already be willing to volunteer for the subcommittee, or are interested in serving on the subcommittee?
We can take nominations as well.
Member Holland?
I can work up to September, and I would be glad to.
Okay, and I think that would definitely take us through, for sure, this first month, which it seems is critical in terms of timeline and getting things established. That's one. Are there any additional volunteers? Member Goodman?
I'm actually not volunteering. I would like to volunteer Member Rose to be on the committee.
I appreciate that sentiment, but I have to decline. I am completely overcommitted at this point.
Because you said such good things at the meeting, and I know you've got a lot of experience and a lot of good thoughts about how something like this could happen. So I hope that you would find it in your heart to participate.
Well,
but I don't want to put any pressure.
My heart is there, but I am overcommitted, and I have to, fulfill commitments I already have, and I wouldn't be able to do that if I were doing this.
I understand.
But thank you.
I also should add, I tried to reach Andy, Member Kellogg, before he left town and is out of internet service, of if he would be interested, but he has another option. I'm not saying nominate him because he's not here, but he has another option, and I haven't heard back from him if he would be interested or not.
And I'm sorry for asking again, we need at least 2?
Yeah, 2 or 3. Just no more than 3.
Yeah, I think 3 would be ideal. It might have to work. I would be happy to contribute if no one else is interested. I'd be happy to work with Member Holland, potentially Member Kellogg if he's interested. But I would put my name in there to help out. So I think we're looking then at a subcommittee of 2, potentially 3 members: Member Holland, Chair Schneider, and we'll ask Member Kellogg. Obviously, we won't volunteer him in his stance. Okay.
It might be something too that after, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on. Jenny, after Jenny is not able to be a part of the subcommittee anymore, if it was feeling like you needed one more person, I would think that you could recruit someone else, or maybe the new person who takes Jenny's seat.
Okay. From a procedural standpoint, I know I don't want to take everyone's time tonight, but we should talk a little about guidelines for the questions, et cetera, to solicit the community input. Do we need to have a motion to establish the subcommittee members?
It's not necessary as long as everyone's in agreement. There wasn't any arm wrestling over who was going to get to be on it. So, but you could just ask if everyone in agreement can raise their hand or say aye.
So if everyone is in agreement or okay with Member Holland and Chair Schneider serving on this subcommittee, could you please raise your hand? Okay. Looks like we have it. I don't know if we need to do any other formal annotation. So that established, could I ask everyone for their quick input on, best questions to ask, how to best gather this information? We don't need to, be here for hours talking about this, but whatever expertise, insight, et cetera, you might have would give us a leg up in getting started.
Now might be an interesting time for me to share the timeline too. Is that okay?
It would, Eva, but I'd also like to give Member Zhang a chance.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes, go ahead.
I just remembered that we discussed like an Instagram account, possibly like a few meetings ago. Like, I think it was just for the arts committee in general at that time, but I think it could be a good platform to get community input, especially like from like the high school or middle school students who use like not just Instagram or maybe like Snapchat, just like social media platforms in general. I think that's a great place to get input from the community, from that part of the community at least.
So if I can ask, I think that's an excellent point. I think we all agree. The question, I think, at times becomes a question of bandwidth, expertise, and familiarity. For example, I'm not a social media expert. I don't use it myself. So I endorse the idea. It's great. It's important. I would look for guidance either from staff, other council members, et cetera, for help in that piece of this puzzle. So unofficially, but we would need, at least I would need some help and guidance in that area. I can't speak for Member Holland.
And this is something that staff can help with. Once the Arts Committee comes up with questions and a survey, then this is something that staff can take and put out to the city's social media. We can have an item in the e-news and post it on the website. So we would definitely provide assistance with putting the survey out to the community.
I'll just want to add that I'm available to, I can help to, guide any like Instagram, getting it going, all that. I can, I certainly can help with that.
I think a potential role here also, aside from any formal channels, is informal sharing and amplifying of messages on whatever list and friends you may have, et cetera, et cetera. Even if you're not formally part of the subcommittee, we would welcome your assistance in kind of amplifying the message, getting the word out. Member Goodman?
Yeah, a couple of things that I gleaned from the meeting. There was a lot of concern that the mural be not just a thing in and of itself, but part of a broader context, particularly part of a broader city response. And at the meeting, it came up that the Social and Economic Justice Commission was going to play a central role in trying to determine what the city's response was going to be. So I would encourage the subcommittee to form a network with some of the other shareholders in the city, particularly the SEJC, who is going to be, I assume, gathering even more information from all the different city departments, and to see if there's any area in which this mural and any ongoing thing that's happened with the mural, like performances and whatnot, can be done in conjunction with some of the things that they might be planning. So that was one thing. The second thing, some of these questions that came up repeatedly was, who really wants this, and why? What's its function? Is it valuable or merely performative? And I hear that word a lot. We have heard that a lot. What exactly does that mean? Is that kind of in the eye of the beholder? I kind of think a mural is important, but I think it's important to sell the idea of the mural and explain to people why it's there and what's happening and where it's coming from. If it's just kind of imposed on the city by a committee that doesn't have a lot of public outreach and transparency, then I think there's a certain danger that the intentions might be misunderstood. There was another thing also where the strong feeling was that needs to be backed up by policy. And this goes back to working in conjunction with what the city is doing. I think. Well, and then there was the other point, of course, which I think is obvious to all of us on the committee based on our experiences, that it needs to be done very, very professionally. And someone actually made a very pointed remark that the artist should be a black person, a black artist, local artist, and that they should be paid. And that was one person who stated that opinion. I think it's probably a good idea. The mechanics of how that works out, I don't know. It's kind of delicate when you start trying to make these decisions and find the right people. But I think that's something we have to be very, very sensitive to.
I agree, and I think a lot of those items will come out or can be reinforced in the listening process, so to speak, and gathering community input. We should reach out to the other committees. We should reach out to the various stakeholders and try to have them have their input drive the information that we're ultimately collecting. And I think we can do that, and ultimately whatever we recommend to City Council can reflect that. Other specific suggestions, comments, ideas about the gathering of information? Based on your experience in the city, elsewhere, etc. If there's none, now I would do two things. One, invite everyone to continue to send your suggestions and your ideas our way as we work through this in the next month or so, but also open up the floor again for wider, brighter comments, concerns, suggestions about this project. And if there are none, then I think we would move to adjourn and get started on collecting information.
Can we hear the timeline?
Oh, yes. Eva, could you share the timeline you had mentioned previously?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and I can also forward this along. This was just going back through, I know we all know the master plan like the back of our hand, but the process that I mentioned before that's outlined is very well thought out, but as mentioned by many people tonight, is that it is, it's a process. So I just kind of started the task of just outlining what it would look like should the committee decide to go that way, or the council decide to go that way. And I'll leave it at that, and then let me share my screen. Something just popped up and is in my way. There we go. Technology. So again, this is, oh, and you know what I did? I put master fee schedule. That's been popping into my head. It should be master in the master plan. So I tried to create, let's say we're starting today, that essentially we've formed a subcommittee, that the next step would be coming back to the, not included in this timeline, but coming back to the committee with some options. And once that's decided, creating an RFP and getting the Arts Committee's approval. Once that goes through, then it needs to go back to council to be approved. And from there, that's when you actually put the RFP out there, and the staff as well as the committee could help to really solicit that. But it does say for 90 days. So that's out there, soliciting artists for 90 days. And then this is where, if you'll remember, there's kind of it splits. As in community projects, we had that threshold be under $10,000. And the reason is to kind of, I don't want to say expedite because it didn't seem to work that way, but to that you wouldn't need a selection panel. And so the idea was that they could come back to the committee for approval before going on to council. If you have a project that is going to be more than $10,000, that is when a selection panel per the master plan is required. So what that means is that the committee would then recruit specific panel members, and that is all outlined in the master plan of who those people should be. They would review the submissions and have a separate meeting basically to choose the artist. Going back to if the committee decides to have that threshold be under $10,000, by all means, given the project and kind of the public comment already that has been heard, and making sure to really make sure that that a process is followed, the committee could suggest that perhaps, even though it is under $10,000, that they still would like a selection panel, because that would allow the selected panel members to really go through rather than the Arts Committee decide who the artist would be. Once the artist is chosen and the artwork is created, then that's when the second community input or gathering notification process would be, and staff would help with that too. And how we did that with the murals and some of the other projects is that a mailer was sent out to anyone within 500 feet of the actual installation. At the location was a rendering and with a website of where to provide input, and that also in the master plan is 60 days. Once the community input has been gathered, that's when it goes back to council to show, here's the artwork that was chosen, here's the location, and here's what the community is saying about the art, the artist, and the location. And then after that, the artwork can begin. So you can see that it's very well thought out. Here we are in June, and we did, for this reason, we did kind of expedite. We moved the meeting once this was a directive. We moved the meeting so that we could have one in June and also have one in July. And I had sent out that meeting date too, rather than just one in July before the August break. But that is the reasoning why we were trying to get 2 meetings in before that August break. But the hope is then, given that council won't meet in August, perhaps they could go, Arts Committee could go to the council, the first meeting in September. Any questions on that?
Just to note that Peggy McQuaid at the meeting did say that it might be possible to create an emergency ordinance to move more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what that would entail, but we don't, in other words, we don't necessarily have to follow the plan that's in the master plan. As good as it is, if we wanted to move ahead, she did allow for the possibility that maybe we could change the rules on an ad hoc basis.
Well, as part of your presentation to the council, you could ask them to waive some of those timeframes. or reduce them if you felt like it was appropriate to do.
Any other comments, questions, concerns from anyone on this topic? Okay, Eva, do we need any type of motion? You know, we accept this charge from the city council or anything like that, or?
No, it's great that the discussion has started. We received some community input and that a subcommittee has been formed. And Brandon, I can reach out to you and we can discuss how we want to ask Member Kellogg as well if he wants to be a part of it. And staff is available through the subcommittee to guide this process and provide input in however we can. So,
great,
yeah.
Thank you. Member.
My internet connection is really bad tonight. I don't have anything further on the timeline, but I do have a few other thoughts and some show and tell I'd like to present to the committee before we leave this topic altogether of the Black Lives Matter art project.
Please proceed.
Oh, please proceed. Okay. So I would like to just read the rest of this little bit of this article from the New Yorker, because it is, they did a really good job of documenting the making of that mural and the artwork and all of what happened. And so I want to just read a little bit here. It's pretty short. So it starts out, the Washington, D.C. chapter of Black Lives Matter condemned the mural and Pettis' street sign. In a tweet, the group called the project a performative distraction from real policy changes and said, Bowser has consistently been on the wrong side of Black Lives Matter D.C. history. This is to appease this meaning this project, this piece, is to appease white liberals while ignoring our demands. Black Lives Matter means defund the police, Pettis said. He understood, we don't want this to be a vanity project, he told me. People have a feeling of joy from these signs, but also a lot of skepticism. We want to see what is next and hoping that this is not it. And then from another member of the community, as a Black man, you feel so suffocated all your life. It's unspoken. Portrayals of Black males center on the hood or selling drugs or crime, he told me. Blacks have been taught that you grow up in the conditions to which they are exposed. To be given a platform to tell the world what is happening and the world should listen was different, he said. So for us, this was empowerment. To put this message on the front lawn of our capital, he told me. This is a shift of energy on our planet. Over the last 4 days, other murals have been painted in big public spaces in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Oakland, California. They are unlikely to be the last. And one of the reasons I read that is because they mention Oakland, California of the examples here. And there we might have some resources with experience to draw upon in getting this done and all of, whatever. And then the only other thing that I had that I wanted to share, I would be asking the host permission to share a screen here. I have a few images. And if that's okay, is that all right?
For me, it's absolutely fine. I'm going to ask staff for some technical assistance on providing the permission.
Yeah, you have to give me permission.
Oh, City Clerk, are you able to give Member Rose?
You did. It looks like you did. I
Oh.
see it right here. Okay, so let me.
You should be able to share.
Yep. Okay, so now let me start my show here. So I'd like to just give you a few examples of public artwork that had a powerful impact on people. And one is one that's become familiar to everyone. So it started local and then of course went international, and that's the AIDS quilt. And then this art piece, Invisible Homeless. This is Luke Jerram in collaboration with Youth Homelessness Charity. I included this one because it's an example of collaborating with the community and doing something more than performative gestures. This is obviously a glass sculpture of, the people who live in this area of, I think this is New Orleans. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Or it's in Europe. I don't remember now, but you get the gist of this. This one is a really interesting one. Stop Telling Women to Smile by New York City artist Tatiana Fazioliza. I'm not pronouncing it right, and I'm probably not going to if I keep trying, but you get the gist of this. Another really powerful public visual art piece. It's a mural. And then this one, which you might know, this is the very wonderful, famous artist Ai Weiwei, who showed actually in San Francisco, and who I believe may still be in prison. I don't know, but these are 14,000 of used life jackets worn by the refugees trying to get from Turkey to Greece, and powerful image, right? And then this wonderful mural, which is a series of public art murals done, again, in collaboration with kids, with Syrian refugee children. And the reason why I included this is because we have already heard that the AUSD, Albany Unified School District, wants in some ways to really participate actively in this. And this is a collaborative project, and that might be, what this can turn into. And this one, which is indeed a Black Lives Matter related mural. We saw these all on TV and the news. These are, you could characterize these as murals, but these were pasted on the plywood boards, that went up around Ferguson. And I know I, as well as everybody else here, received the email from somebody who had gone on Solano Avenue and painted on the plywood boards that at least a couple of stores used, during the protests. And here, they actually used paper. They didn't even use paint. They used paper, and that enabled them to distribute this widely. And that's it. Just wanted to share that with you all. Ideas and thoughts. That's it for me.
Thanks. That was great.
Thank you.
Anything else on item 6 before we move on to item 7, future agenda items? Okay, item 7, are there any requests for future items to put on our agendas going forward?
I think I should mention something about the haiku program, whether it is or whether it isn't, to be decided, I guess.
You like that on the agenda, the next agenda?
Yeah, I'll have something to say about it. When is our next meeting? Is it the end of July? Is that right?
I believe it's
July 27th.
July 27th. Okay, yeah.
Any other future agenda items? Any requests? Okay, then I think.
Is it going to be by Zoom? Are we going to do it by Zoom?
Yep.
Probably, right? Yeah.
Both of them, until further notice.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we need a motion to adjourn. Is that correct? Okay, I'm seeing nods of hats from Steph. Do we have any volunteers?
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor of adjourning? Member Hall,
Yes.
Member Black,
Yes.
Member Jang,
Yes.
Member Rose,
Yes.
Member Goodman.
Yes.
I also concur, so it's unanimous. I believe we are therefore adjourned. Thank you, everyone.